In this demonstration, we are going to look at how to calculate equivalent units of production, unit costs of production, and we'll also look at how to book journal entries to show the assignment of costs to units being transferred out of a process. So if we look at our problem here, we see that Home Furnishings has gathered the following information. We know that no units were available in beginning work in process. 36,000 units of product were started into production during the period, and 6,000 units were in ending work in process. These units were 40% complete with respect to conversion and 100% complete with respect to materials costs. During the period, Home Furnishings incurred $72,000 in direct materials costs, $81,000 in direct labor costs, and $97,200 in manufacturing overhead costs. The problem asks us to determine the unit cost of production and then to show the assignment of cost to units transferred out and in process. So the first thing we need to do for part 1, determine the unit cost of production, is calculate the equivalent units of production with respect to both materials and conversion. For materials, we're always going to start with the number of units transferred out. In this case, that's the 36,000 units that were started into production minus the 6,000 that are left in ending work in process at the end of the period. So we transferred out 30,000 units. To that, we are going to add the ending work in process units factored at the completion rate with respect to materials costs. So we had 6,000 physical units in ending work in process that were 100% complete with respect to materials costs. So 6,000 times 100%. When we add those two numbers together, we see that we had 36,000 equivalent units of production with respect to materials for this period. We'll do the same thing for conversion. Again, we start with units transferred out. We know that to be 30,000 for this period. We'll add the ending work in process, 6,000 physical units, only this time we factor by the completion rate with respect to conversion, 40%. So 2,400. When we sum those two figures, we see that equivalent units with respect to conversion were 32,400. Then to determine our unit costs, we need to take into account the manufacturing costs incurred for each category of manufacturing costs during that period. So our unit cost for materials is going to be all of the direct materials costs we incurred for the period, $72,000, divided by the equivalent units with respect to materials that we'd previously calculated at 36,000. So our unit cost with respect to materials is an even $2. We'll do the same thing for conversion. Now our conversion costs, again, are made up of direct labor, which was $81,000, plus manufacturing overhead, which was $97,200. We'll divide that by our equivalent units of production with respect to conversion of 32,400, and we see that our unit cost with respect to conversion is $5.50. That makes our total unit cost the sum of those two numbers, $2 plus $5.50, or $7.50. The second part of the problem asks us to show the assignment of cost to units transferred out and in process. In order to show the assignment of cost to units transferred out, we'd be talking about the flow of costs from work in process to finished goods. Our total unit cost would be factored in, since those units were 100% complete with respect to every cost, and we multiply that by the number of units we actually transferred out, the 30,000. So we'd show $225,000 in cost being transferred from work in process to finished goods. For the units that are still in process, we would be showing the materials and conversion costs that were assigned at the beginning of the production process. So we have costs from raw materials inventory to work in process for the total of our direct materials costs of $72,000. We'd also have direct labor costs coming from the factory labor account to work in process for the total of our direct labor costs of $81,000. And finally, we would show applied overhead coming from the manufacturing overhead account to work in process for the total of our overhead costs incurred, $97,200.